Well, I haven't been this excited to speak to someone in the studio for a very, very long time. This is someone I've admired for many, many years. He's been called several names: a millionaire, a politician, a socialite, a best-selling author, for some time a prison inmate as well. But just for the next half hour, my guest in the studio, Mr. Jeffrey Archer. Thank you so much for making time to be with us.
Well, I only made time because I set out from my hotel 4.5 days ago to try and get here on time.
Allow me to apologize on behalf of the city and the traffic.
Well,
and anything else you might have encountered on your way?
Well, I'm just a little bit surprised how you teach your young people in driving. I mean, do you actually instruct them to have the white line going down the middle of the car?
So they're like airline pilots. You have to just go down the middle, and then if you go fast enough, you might take off.
But what about, why do you always have the tractors on the outside lane? And yesterday, when I was in Delhi, I was overtaken by a camel, which wasn't much. It's been an incredible trip.
It's entertaining. So this is how it works. The guy who sells the fruit is on the outside lane.
Yes.
And then there's the parking.
Yes.
And then there's the illegal parking. And then there's the tractor and the cow. And you find your way through that. It's an obstacle course. It makes it exciting.
Yes, and we got here.
You did. And I must tell you that where we are right now in our studio is a particularly difficult part of the city to access.
That's a relief to know.
Yes. But you were in Delhi and you were in Jaipur. You've been traveling.
Yes. Jaipur was wonderful. I did the Jaipur Festival.
Yes.
7,500 people came to hear me speak. That was an unbelievable experience.
I'm not surprised, though. Are you surprised? Were you surprised?
Yes, I was.
You were?
Absolutely shattered. Shattered. You see this mass of human beings and you think, wow, can they all have read the book? I mean, it's unbelievable.
They would have. Not all of them would have bought the non-pirated copies, but
well,
they would have all read it. They would have all read it.
My man in the hotel taking care of me, a super guy, said, would I sign the book? And I said, yes, of course. And he gave me a girl's name. He said, that's my sister. I said, fine. Nice present for you. No, he said. My mother gets it first. My sister gets it second. I get it third. And then I decide who to give it to. I said, well, that doesn't help me very much. And he said, on average, 10 people.
On average, 10 people.
In Britain, 2.3. In America, 2.4. In India, 10 people read a book.
That's fantastic. And you know, there's so much conversation now about the fact that nobody reads anymore. But do you believe that?
No, it's not true. My figures are up overall. No, that's not true. In India, in particular, they still love books.
Yes.
Actually, the Kindle hasn't taken off.
It hasn't.
Whereas in England, it's 40%, and in America, it's 42%. Here, it's still only 2%. And because you love books. In fact, I became very aware of this when I was coming from the airport, and a charming little boy tapped on my window with a pile of books and said, would you like the latest Jeffrey Archer? And I said, I am the latest Jeffrey Archer.
You should put the picture on the back of the book.
Quite right. Well, it's interesting you pick that one up first, Faye, because...
That's the latest Jeffrey Archer.
No, that's the first of the Clifton Chronicles.
Oh, yes, it is.
No, that's the latest one there.
Yes,
But I'm signing autographs in a school, and there's a boy standing there who I can hardly see. So I said, are you there? Yes, I'm here. How old are you? 8. I said, 8? And he'd already read Only Time Will Tell at the age of 8. Yeah. Now, this is the new generation of Indians. So when you say, are they reading? They're going to take over the world. Don't kid yourself. That 8-year-old is going to take over the world.
But it's fantastic, the influence that you've had on young people. And I was having a conversation. We have a very young team, and they're all lined up right now to speak to you when we're done with this conversation. And we've all read your books because our parents were reading the books. And when they were done, it's the same thing. So we would, walk in and spend our summers reading those books. So we started fairly early because there was easy access to the literature.
And it's very flattering because it's now, I'm so old that it's grandparents, parents, and children.
Yes.
You don't expect to survive that long. I mean, Cain and Abel it's on its 124th reprint. And 100 million people have read it. And it could have died, I don't know, 6 weeks after publication, but it just goes on and on.
It just goes on and on, yes.
And we are very grateful to the Indian people. Very
But Cain
grateful.
and Abel, may I just say, was fantastic. It was a brilliant, brilliant book. When you wrote it, did you know that, oh, this is fantastic, I've done such a good job?
Very good question. I sold it to the United States for 3.2 million 40 years ago, which should have woken me up because I was penniless at the time. But I was still nervous. I was absolutely nervous. And then a lady said, you know, this book is going to last 100 years. I still didn't believe it. And it didn't get on the bestsellers list in the first week because no one had ever heard of me in America. And it didn't on the second week. And then in the third week, I got 2 minutes on the Larry King show.
Wow.
And he was meant to be interviewing straight after me Dr. Henry Kissinger. And he was linked up in Paris to do Dr. Henry Kissinger. And I'd been told firmly I would have 2 minutes, which we all know on television is a long time, and Dr. Henry Kissinger would have 28 minutes. And Larry King said, well, describe Cain and Abel, please, Jeffrey. Clearly hadn't read a word. And I said, well, Cain and Abel, story of 2 men, both born on the same day, one with everything, one with nothing. They only meet once, and it changes their whole lives. I thought, you're now about to be kicked off, but you've got it over. And I said, Cain and Abel. So I was very pleased with myself. He said, tell me a bit more, Jeffrey. So I described the 2 men and how this one, and I realized they couldn't get through to Henry Kissinger. And I had 30 minutes on the Larry King show, and it went to #1 the next week. So sometimes you need a bit of luck.
Yes, and the power of television, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not forget.
Never underestimate
the power
of television. When I was on the breakfast show in New York and knew nothing and was naive, and I could see again that the book was in pristine condition and then no one had ever, he hadn't touched it, the man who was interviewing me, and he was looking there and he said, sorry, take your notes.
Yes.
He said, they'd sent me over on the Concorde because they wanted to prove how important I was. And he looked at his notes and he looked at me and I thought, he hasn't read the book. And he said, is it you? I hear you came over on the Concorde. And I said, yes, that's quite right. This is, and I was on my slot. The red light was on. This was my chance. So I said, yes, Concorde is a plane that the British built. It flies twice the height of any plane in the history of man. It flies twice the speed of any plane in the history of man. You can have breakfast in London. You can have breakfast in New York because you've flown on the greatest plane on earth. And I'm proud to be British and tell you this. And he said, been lovely having you on the show. My publishers were not pleased.
Do you miss the Concorde?
Well, do you know, it's funny you should say that in a moment of seriousness. It's the first time almost in history that we've gone back, isn't it? It's the first time it got stopped and we now go in slower planes.
Yes.
Bombay
and it was so
planes.
exciting. It was so beautiful.
Oh, I loved it.
It was so beautiful.
I loved it. You're right, it was physically beautiful, but just getting to New York in under 4 hours was under 3 hours for a few minutes was wonderful.
I mean, it was
fantastic.
Completely ridiculously expensive, but totally worth it.
We told our publishers that's what we wanted.
Well, we could use it with the traffic here.
You could, my God.
So tractor, camel, car, Concorde.
Helicopter.
Helicopter. We do
But if you get your metro in London, the metro, what we call the underground, works very well.
Yes.
And I hope when you get that, it'll be...
We do. I mean, a lot of the pain you saw outside the office is because there's a metro coming up. So it's temporary pain.
They should have had it finished by the time I got here. I mean,
I know.
What
we'll call them.
What?
We will call them.
Well, yes.
We'll have a strongly worded letter.
Well, quite right.
Well, let's also talk about some of the other things. Since we were talking about Concorde, it was British. There were so many, sort of cars and ideas that were British that perhaps are not doing as well anymore. Do you, as an Englishman, feel a little, that maybe that some of that is waning? Brexit and everything that's going on right now? Of course.
But we had a great history, and the British had great achievements.
Yes.
And I am one of those who looks upon certain things I see in India with great pride.
Yes.
I had the honor as a child to work with Margaret Thatcher and with Mountbatten, with Lord Mountbatten. So I have a feeling and love of India early on, and I came here for the first time 40 years ago, and it's changed beyond recognition. And the biggest change has been women. When I first came 40 years ago, they all wore traditional
I don't know
dress.
if you can, sorry, forgive me. There's a photograph of you with Margaret Thatcher out
God
there.
bless her.
Yes, God
Great
bless her.
lady. Very
Yes.
proud to work with her. 11 years.
Yes.
11 years with her.
You
and
look,
of course,
you
with
look
very,
sharp.
very close association with
Yes.
my wife as well, because Mary was a scientist, is a scientist. Mary taught chemistry at Oxford.
Yes.
And Margaret Thatcher had been an undergraduate.
Yes.
And read chemistry at Oxford. So they became good friends in their own right. And my wife, which will please the women watching this program, went on to be chairman of Cambridge University's hospital, is now chairman of the Science Museum. There she is, God
Yes.
bless her.
Yes.
Now chairman of the Science Museum, and the Queen has made her a dame. She's now Dame Mary.
Oh, fantastic.
So women watching,
Yes.
it's your turn.
So I'm going to take you back. So forgive me, I interrupted you. You were saying the
How
thing that has changed the
did you
most.
interrupt
I
me?
did.
Good
I apologize.
heavens.
You said the thing that's changed most in India is the women. And
India.
in India, yes.
I went to a school yesterday. 1,400 children came to hear me speak. I was introduced by a 16-year-old girl. The vote of thanks was done by a girl. The presentation was done by a girl. The signing line was done by a girl, while 700 pathetic boys looked on and watched. They're going to take over. I was looking, it was happening in front of my eyes. And I said rather casually to the head girl as I left, I hope you'll be going to university. And she said, I'm going to St. Anne's College, Oxford. And so I was properly put in my place. But actually on totally another subject,
yes.
where I was truly put in my place yesterday. Hadn't thought of admitting this on television. I was in my hotel and I got in the lift. Charming man about my own age stopped me and said, how nice to meet you, Lord Archer. And he shook hands. And he said, I love your country. I said, do you come? He said, well, I was educated at Cambridge. And this is, we're talking about a man of 70. He said, I was educated at Cambridge. And I said, where were you educated? He said, I read mathematics at Trinity, Cambridge. I said, what an honor. And
yes.
50 years ago, that must have been fairly remarkable. He said, no, he said. Trinity read your exam papers. They don't look at the color of your skin.
Oh, fantastic.
Isn't that wonderful?
That is fantastic.
What a great line.
Yes.
And we shook hands. I thought that was a great line.
That is beautiful. And you're so right about the fact that the fortunes of Indian women have changed drastically in the last
hope so.
50 years. And it's happening around the world as well. It's
Oh,
happening
yes,
in
everywhere.
Africa. It's
but
happening
more here. I had
Yes.
a 12-year-old on stage with me a couple of weeks ago. She gets up on stage and she's written a book already at 12. I picked her out of the audience. Who's written a book up? Goes, I said, come on. She said, I'm 12. And she brought up a little book.
Yes.
And she stood by me and I said, well, you're on your second book? Yes, she said, I'm on my second book. And I said, how's that going? Very well. She said, I shall be selling more copies than you. And she's 12. So I'm keeping in touch with her. But
Yes.
this is not uncommon.
Yes.
There is a generation of young women now who are going to come through and run this country, and this country will be better for it.
Inshallah. Well, you know, you said something very interesting before we sat down. You said you handwrite everything.
Every word.
No cell phone, no tablet, no computer.
My wife
no...
uses these wonderful things over here. These
Yes.
press. She's got them all. She's got everything.
Okay,
I've got
it's a
nothing.
laptop. Okay.
I handwrite. I rise at 6 in the morning.
Yes.
I work from 6 until 8. Take a 2-hour break. 10 until 12. Take a 2-hour break. 2 until 4. Take a 2-hour break. 6 until 8. In bed by 9:30. Handwrite every word. First draft usually takes 5 weeks. And this draft of the latest book, what you have on your desk here is the 14th draft. Every one handwritten. I wish there was a shortcut.
It's hard work and it's discipline.
Tremendous discipline.
Yes.
But I say to girls, a lot of girls come to see me, young girls in India come to see me and say, I want to be a writer, Jeffrey, what should I do next? I say, go to the ballet. They say, what? I say, go to the ballet. You want me to go to the ballet? Why? I say, I want you to sit in the audience. I want you to see the prima ballerina.
Yes.
and think how many hours she has spent becoming the prima ballerina, then I want you to look behind and look at the chorus and think how many hours they've spent just being the chorus. Then I want you to think about the thousands of girls who dream about being in the chorus. Talent is useful, but you've got to be willing to work very hard indeed. And it's no different for an author. It doesn't matter if you play the violin, you're a countertenor or a ballet dancer, or an author. It's damned hard work.
Yes.
If you have a God-given talent,
Yes.
if you're a storyteller, you're lucky. But if you're not willing to put the work in, nothing will happen.
So
I see you've thrown the notes away.
Yes, I have. I don't need
you had
them
all
anymore.
these notes. Yeah. She had. Where are you, camera one? She had all these notes. No,
We've thrown them away.
they've gone.
Yes.
The notes.
I don't care anymore.
The notes are gone. That's the end of the notes. She doesn't care anymore.
I don't care anymore. Yeah, I had a literature professor in college who told me that the secret to good writing is rewriting. You can never be satisfied. You actually are never satisfied. It's never done.
Yeah.
And you know, every writer could, if I handed you this, you probably want to make some changes again, but you have to just keep working at it.
Well, Mary says if I went into a shop and saw one of my books and was allowed to read it, I would be turning the pages and correcting it. So you're quite right. But 14 rewrites.
So how do you know when you're done?
For Heads You Win.
How do you know when it's good enough?
It's a jolly good question. I think when you're down to a comma here, a word there, a sentence every 20 pages, it's time to hand it over and let someone else read it. I think you're there. But while you're still writing on every page, no, you go on and on and on. It's the poor secretary who suffers.
Do you write out a structure first?
No.
You don't?
No, I do not. You're quite right. There are people who put up yellow stickers, put the whole damn so they know that No. Now you take this one, for example. I had read Heads You Win. I had read Colin Powell's life biography.
Yes.
Called about him, about the great man. And I read that his mother, who lived in Jamaica, wanted a better life. And she decided, I have to go to Britain or I have to go to America. Which shall I do? And she chose the United States. And Colin Powell was born in Harlem and not in Hackney. And so he became the Secretary of State for the United States of America. And I wondered, if he'd gone to Britain,
who would he have
what
been?
would have happened? But you see, I don't think in those days he could have become a British Army officer. I don't think he could have become, in fact, I know he couldn't, head of the armed forces. I don't think he could have become Foreign Secretary because he was black from Jamaica. But 30 years later, the world has moved on. We now have in England a Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, a dear friend, who is a Pakistani. And his opposite number, the Shadow Home Secretary, is the first black woman MP. So it's changed. So I thought I'll take this one stage further. I'll take a Russian boy, age 16, very bright. He has to escape from Russia because his father's been killed by the KGB. And his mother has to decide, shall I go to Britain? Or shall I go to America? And I decided, I'll be very courageous, I'll do both. The same boy will land in Britain, and you'll follow one story. The same boy, and he'll be Alex, he's Alexander, but he'll be Alex when he's in Britain, Sasha when he's in Britain, and Alex when he's in America. So you'll follow two stories of exactly the same child, arriving in different cities, experiencing different things, going in different directions, but it's the same child. And what's happened when it comes to the end.
That's brilliant. 2 minutes on television, well done.
Yes.
Right book. Okay, so you've always been a big fan of the cricket.
Mad about cricket.
Yes.
My life began really with the Nawab of Patodi. We were at Oxford together, and he was a dear friend.
What a charming
And his death was very sad for me. He was very kind to me. Whenever I came to India, he threw parties for me and was very kind. And I loved him because when he lost his eye, it was so brave to battle on. And then your next Indian captain that I got to know well was Farooq Engineer, became a dear friend. And since then, I've met Kumble and become a friend of Sachin Tendulkar,
Yes.
and I quite recently met Kohli, and they're all rubbish. They're all completely. I mean, England has got the best team in the world. I mean,
Say that again. So, but Virat Kohli, has
I
anyone
think
ever
he
seen
may
anything
be-
like it?
He may be the best batsman I've ever seen. He may be.
The ICC awards, he swept all of them. It's never happened before.
Who is surprised? There
Yes.
doesn't seem to be one level at which he can't give you 60 any day of the week,
Yes.
and 100 every 3 matches.
Yes.
And he's a fierce competitor too. He doesn't like losing that one, does he? And the comments he made about Australia when he came back from his victory in Australia managed to hit the front pages in England.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Not
Amazing.
as much a gentleman's game as it used to be back in the 50s
Well,
or the 60s.
let's go back and take that at 2 levels.
Yes.
One, when the Australians were, when the Indians were in Australia the time before and Kumble was captain. What a gentleman he
Yes.
was, and how well he behaved. No marks for Mr. Ponting and the way he behaved.
Yes.
India came out of that with great dignity. And I'd like to say, while I'm on this show and got the opportunity to berate you, I hate 2020.
You do?
I can tolerate just about one-day cricket. Cricket is a test match between 2 great nations. And the complete proof of this was when India played Australia, and Australia made the Indians follow on.
Yes.
And VVS Laxman and Rahul Dravid
Yes.
batted through the day, and the Australians went back in and lost the match. That's
Yes.
cricket. That's
Yes.
test cricket. And so when you said when we were off the air, I hear you love Rahul Dravid. What a beautiful stroke player. But he was a test cricketer.
Yes. Who doesn't love Rahul Dravid? What a gentleman there as well.
I certainly do. He's a charming and delightful man. And of course, I'm influenced by how many of their wives read the book. But nevertheless, no, I think you probably are the best team in the world at the moment.
Yes.
If the final in England in the one-day game is between England and India, as it's in England, that could be very interesting indeed, and can switch, because you have 2 or 3 of the greatest batsmen on earth. If they have an off day, anyone
Yes.
has an off day.
Yes.
So I hope that will be the final. I've got tickets, but I hope that'll be the final.
Have you heard of a young cricketer called Jofra Archer, who's named
Yes,
after
I
you?
have. A very
You've seen
fine,
him play?
fast bowler. And may well get in the England team.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So he's
But I always
still
wanted
on
to
the-
captain the England side. I mean, it's one
So
of
we
the-
have to root
one
for
of the
Jofra
great
Archer.
failures of my life is that I did not captain the England cricket side. But I love the game. I'm passionately devoted to it.
I want to ask you right now for advice for people who hope to be writers. You did say, of course, hard work and discipline.
Yes.
Where do we look
You
for the
used the
stories
word,
from?
Faye. You
Yes.
said writers.
Yes.
If you're well-read
Mm-hmm.
and well-educated, you can be a writer.
Yes.
I am a writer, but first and foremost, I'm a storyteller.
Yes.
I tell stories that begin once a time, and I want you to turn the page. That is a God-given gift. Writing is part of education. So to those people, I would say, read the classics, keep reading all the time. Don't be in a hurry. I wrote Cain and Abel when I was 38 years old. My first book I wrote at the age of not a penny more, not a penny less,
Yes.
at 36. And I get these youngsters of 12 coming up saying, I want to write the great Indian novel. Take your
Calm
time.
down, yeah.
Write short stories. Write
Does
articles.
it have to come from life experience? You have to live enough before you're able to write?
It helps. It certainly helps. I've met interesting people. I've had an interesting life. That certainly helps. But I say to young people, don't worry about that. I mean, the great R.K. Narayan could write about a tax collector in a small village
Yes.
who was having trouble with his wife. And you thought, this is boring, until you started reading.
Yes.
And you couldn't stop turning the page because he made the whole thing come alive. And that's, R.K. Narayan had this remarkable gift to do that. So I say to young people, read R.K. Narayan rather
Yes.
than the Nobel Prize winners.
What do you think of all of the new fantasy fiction, Game of Thrones, dragons, elves, that sort of thing? Does it...
I don't understand it.
Okay.
I apologize. All these amazing things that sell millions of books. I'm not complaining because it's a good thing that people are reading.
Yes.
But count me out. I write a simple story that begins once upon a time and hope you will turn the page.
Yes. Your view on Harry Potter?
Oh, brilliant.
You've read it?
She's a genius and one of the great writers of all time. We only have one thing in common. My first book was turned down by 16 publishers.
Wow.
Her first book was turned down by 18 publishers. So I say that because you were talking about the young. Don't get depressed. Don't give in because someone writes and says, oh, I don't think this is quite what we're looking for in our distinguished house. Bunk 'em. Get on with what you do and don't give in, because in the end, it isn't publishers who decide.
Yes.
It isn't critics who decide. It's the public who decide who will be read. And Harry Potter, the public decided.
Yes.
And do you know it was the children, not even the public.
Yes.
Children decided.
So when you know you have a story, when you've done 16 drafts and you've now arrived at what you think is perhaps the closest to perfection that you can get, and there are publishers saying, no, there's this temptation of maybe this is not the story. The thing people are reading right now are
Don't listen to them.
Have
nothing to do with vampires.
Okay.
Have nothing to do with any of those things.
Okay.
Do what you do best. If your mother is a hairdresser and you go to work every morning in a television studio riding a bicycle, write about that. It never worried Arcane Orion. Write about what you feel you know about. The reader will then know, oh yeah, of course, he knows what she knows what they're talking about. Don't do vampires because vampires are in. There are no vampires in Heads You Win. None at all.
Do you want to do a close-up for the camera? Switch a close-up to the camera.
Just in case they miss it.
There it is. So just in case you miss it, we're going to make it worth your while.
There are no vampires in this book.
There are no vampires in this book, and we're out of time.
Oh.
Quickest half hour ever.
That's very kind. And thank you very much, Faye, for having me on the show.
What a pleasure.
I saw your picture when I came in. I thought, oh, she looks frightening. She'll tear me apart. Been lovely being on the show.
It has been lovely.
Thank
and
you
I do hope
indeed.
we have more conversations and more opportunities to chat.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, fantastic.
Complete your TV viewing experience with the best of Hollywood entertainment and news. Get the Times Movies and News pack at just 13 rupees. Ask your cable or DTH provider now.